Hi there. Welcome to the Walking Tower. I'm Analia, your spiritual translator. I'm an emotional and spiritual health coach, part-time witch, and your no fuckery guide to the shadows of your psyche. I started my journey as a skeptic, and if you give me a few minutes of your time, I'd like to show you some things that might start your journey to being a recovering skeptic too. As part of the show, I'm going to be talking to some interesting men about their own journeys, their passions, their experiences, and their connection to themselves. And it is my hope to build a source of entertainment that can also provide some helpful skills that we can carry with us into the chaos of the current world. So let's get into the show. And I had the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Alex Marcou, an ex-Carlton footballer with 3 grand final wins on his list of achievements. He's got an eye for detail and a skill for dressing men in powerful, sharp clothing. He's a Cancer sun and rising and is about to embark on a new energetic chapter toward incredible self-transformation. I hope you enjoy it. I think I figured out your birth time based on
Going what time?
I reckon it's like between 5 and 6 a.m.
Funny you should say that because my nephew was born on the same day,
Mm-hmm.
and when he was born, it was 5:58 a.m. in the morning, and my mum said, "Oh, you were born around that time."
Yeah. Yeah. I knew it. I've gotten good at this. I've gotten good at figuring it out. I've looked at your birth chart in relation to obviously the whole of Carlton, right? Because so I get the birth chart based on your birthday. So when I did Carlton, it's like Carlton's birthday when they were first founded. And so they have energy as well. And so where it crosses over, I find very fucking interesting. And then I looked at yours in relation to Michael Voss as well, because he's a Cancer as well. So he was born 7th of July. And so that's interesting to me because if I had questions for him about the way he sees things, I think you and him would share like some similar kind of perspectives on it, which is very interesting. One of the main things about your birth chart is being a Cancer, and a Cancer energy is not somebody that finds discipline very easily without having like an emotional connection to the thing, right? If it's not something that you care about, who cares? And so there has to be an emotional connection. And then the other side of Cancer energy is it's one of the more passive kind of energies. It doesn't like to get into fights. It doesn't like to sort of start stuff. And so then that always makes me interested in like, well, how did these people end up in football? Like, how did you end up doing something so masculine? But the rest of your energy, there's like specific lineups for where that is. Like your house of career is in Aries energy, and Aries energy is that masculine fire energy and is the overall energy of the AFL.
Wow.
And so like the where you are with career, your whole social reputation is within that same energy. And then your actual placement for masculine energy is in Aries as well. So the way that you use that was for your career, which I find very interesting. And then, the other things that are in your chart that point to that, your North Node is very representative of where you're going, what your goal in life is, and your best way forward.
What was that? North Node?
North Node, yeah. And so it's a placement on the moon. And what it represents in your birth chart is like where you should go to, where you're heading to. And yours is in Libra, which means that relationships with people is like your best goals forward will always involve relationships with people. And so there you are with a team of people playing footy, and here you are, you see people all the time, which again is very interesting for somebody with a Cancer energy because they tend to like to be by themselves a little bit more, unless they've got these other placements that are more curious about relationships, which you do, which you do have. So it all makes sense to me. So you've got the other really interesting things that I looked at for your chart is how it lines up with when you were playing for Carlton. So you started in 1979. So in 1979, the eclipses that we had, and the eclipses, what they represent are like moments in your life that align you with where you're supposed to be. And so the eclipses that were in 1979 were changing your inner belief system in who you were and how you feel about your own success and where you want to be heading to. And then when you were part of the other two grand finals, 81 and 82, in 81, the eclipses were happening on your self-worth, your financial worth, and the transformation of those things. So sort of making you believe in yourself a little bit more. And then in 1982, that grand final, those eclipses were like on your outward reputation, how people saw you and building relationships with people. So I think that's very interesting as that progression of like winning those grand finals kind of comes along. And then when you left Carlton in 1986, the eclipses were like on your future goals, like shifting your future goals, which again, very interesting. Like you moved on from then. And one of the things that I noticed is where those eclipses were at those big points in your life, we are kind of there now. We're like in a similar energy field. So where you were in 1979, we're kind of in that space now. So there's like these next few moments, next few years are bringing the same kind of energy, therefore potentially the same kind of opportunity to go into the next level of who you are, which is very cool. And you've got the planet of luck, the planet of abundance, the planet of like getting big rewards for putting in work is currently occupying your whole creative self and the way that people see you. So not only are you being given these opportunities to like change things moving forward and become whatever new evolution of you, but you have these luck placements that are like bringing you even bigger opportunities to be able to expand. So wherever you're going for the next year, you've got incredible luck to do so. Yeah. And I think based on the rest of this, that you will definitely be meeting new people that are like going to come in and help you find something that you haven't thought of. It's like there will be a missing piece of the puzzle and it's likely to come in through your relationships with people, but likely to be new relationships coming in, because with that luck energy, that's also this expansion of like people that you would trust to kind of help you. And so those two things happening at the same time. So any kind of business moves that you want to do that involve people, you're in the right window to be able to do those things. Okay. The eclipses that are happening currently are about like your voice, your people, and like your inner rule structure and belief system. And then in February, they shift. So next year for you is going to be transforming your financial abundance and your sense of self-worth. So
his financial abundance. Jackie will love all this.
Yeah. Well, Jackie's interesting. The other interesting thing is where her energy kind of sits in your placements as well, because she's a Scorpio. So your house of fun is in Scorpio energy.
Wow.
So obviously you guys get along because her whole entire energy system is that. And so then your other placement, which is Scorpio energy, is your Neptune. And Neptune, it covers a lot of things, but one of the things that I think is interesting in your relationship with a Scorpio is that it's about imagination. And so like she exists in a space that your energy system sees as fun, sees as joyful, and sees as like somebody who brings a lot of imagination to the table, which I think makes sense, I think really makes sense. Yeah. Because especially like your chart's very cheeky. When I was looking at it last night, this man was very cheeky when he was playing footy. I can just tell. Because you've got this energy of like really being able to notice how people feel, right? Like that's Cancer energy really notices how people feel, whether they say it or not. And then the way that you communicate is a bit of a jokester kind of, but very confident. And you can sort of, you know, I always say this placement I call the if words were spells, what kind of spells could you create with your words? And yours are, you can make people feel really confident and really good about themselves just from talking to them. So you have this magical ability. And then the way that you build relationships with people is also, it's got two sides to it and it's got a curiosity to it. So you make people feel very comfortable because dark or light, whatever energy they're in, you're still comfortable to have a conversation with them, which I think that magical power over the next 2 years will be huge. If you need to talk people into doing anything, you will, again, have the extra power to be able to do so, especially in the first half of next year.
Wow. Okay.
So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Because I think that's going to be the biggest year will be next year and the year after, because that's going to be just for transforming your whole concept of money, of how you make your money and like who you are, like that slight shift in who you are, and moving on to that next space, because you currently are going through this sort of process of being shown things that you haven't seen about yourself either in a really long time or like you've never seen them about yourself. And looking at the way that your energy would have experienced growing up, you know, your dad quite fiery, very driven, probably very like a very strong kind of personality, and your mum a little bit on the darker side, a little bit more emotional, most likely, whether you saw that or not, potentially having some issues with depression and those sorts of things, because likely had some stuff happen when she was growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that side of the way that you experienced your mum as a child kind of helps you change your life. Like how you experienced her, you sort of see her as somebody who can transform and overcome things, and you kind of took that piece of knowledge from her.
Like my mum's upbringing, from leaving her village to getting put on a train to go into an orphanage for years, not seeing her parents.
Wow.
Oh, her stories. And when you said that, I've gone, that's what I relate to.
Yeah.
And she's come over here, and I think that affected her for a while.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I wouldn't say it probably was depression at the time, but she wouldn't go out a lot. And
Yeah. And I mean, that's that energy where, you know, the energy of like kind of keeping to yourself, dealing with your own stuff internally, making sure that you're kind of giving everybody what they need and sort of putting yourself second. It's that kind of an energy, the way that you would have experienced her. But she actually gives you a lot of magic. This is the kind of chart that like you are magic. You're a magic person. This is the energy of like a witch, where your water placement sits, where your intuition is, your ability to speak these things into reality are huge. And over the next year, I think you'll start to kind of understand how your words and the way that you use them with people can make things become real. You can speak things into reality. And you have a very interesting placement. One of the more witchy placements that spiritual people would say is a Neptune in Scorpio, and it comes through your family house. And I think it comes from your mother's side. And I think that you have on your mother's side, I think there would be a long line of very spiritual people. And I think you get a lot of your magic through that, whether you know it or not. And from your dad, he kind of taught you how to understand who you were in a more physical way. Yeah. The relationship that you have with your body and your mind kind of came through the way that he did things. And that level of like being direct, I think you get that as well in building your own rule structure for yourself, and having your own sense of discipline and your own sense of authority also came from him. And so then when you look at the way that you experienced, negatives is not really the right word, but like the kind of wound story that you get as a child of like, this one in particular is very prevalent for the next couple of years. The childhood wound of like kind of feeling a bit different, a bit strange, a bit too weird. And that placement right now is being activated for power. And for you, it's how you change your life, how you transform your life. So I can really see over the next few years of you kind of bringing out this other side of you that you probably haven't seen since you were a child, a little bit more quirky, a little bit more weird. And like the more that you lean into that, the more power you have to change your life, which is an incredible placement right now for where the energy in the universe is. And then your other one is like, they kind of go together, because the other one is sort of not quite understanding how to feel about who you were as a kid. It's sort of like a wound of identity in a way, where you're constantly trying out new versions of yourself to sort of see how they kind of come across. And again, that's something that we've just sort of started building something new in as well. And so for you, because it sits within your career and how you use your masculine energy, you're being kind of gifted this moment to really kind of grow the more weird sides of you, but through the same kind of energy that you've used in the past for career, which is really cool, which is really cool. We're having a moment energetically now that Neptune is currently in retrograde. And what that means for most people is that our dream space gets really weird, and that we are sort of dreaming of things that have happened in the past. We're sort of going through them, sorting through memories and that sort of stuff in our dreams. But your particular placement means that if your dreams get strange, like for the next 6 months, you're likely dreaming of things that are yet to come. because you were born when that planet was going backwards.
Wow.
And so now it's currently going backwards. You sort of have the opportunity to be dreaming of things happening in the future. So if you wake up from a dream that's given you an amazing idea for something in the future, write it down.
Yeah, okay.
Because your magic kind of runs through that space. It's sort of the magic that through the enjoyment of changing things within your life, that's kind of where it runs its best course. And you have this ability to sort of absorb darker emotions of people and turn it into something. And whether that is you're turning it into telling them that they're a good person, making them feel good about themselves, or just kind of taking it yourself and using it as motivation or fuel to sort of do something in your life. Because, you know, you are somebody who does like to do things for other people. You like to kind of help them put their lives together, help them understand their worth. And you're somebody who can sort of intuitively feel what they want to do and then look at the details of their life and be able to kind of build that puzzle for them a little bit. So you have this incredible ability to like work with people, but you also can use that on yourself. And the energy that we've got for the next couple of years is going to help you in both ways be able to do that. So your dreams could be giving you a lot of information.
I don't dream much though.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all dream.
Yeah.
But I can't remember a lot of them.
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. So if you do remember any for the next 6
Write it
months,
down.
write it down. It'll be very interesting.
Okay.
It'll be very interesting
will.
to see if they come true.
I will.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Viking. I'm Idris, and this is for the younglings.
For the younglings.
If I was the king of the world, I would make it that if people weren't allowing homeless people to do anything, like if they were just sitting there and laughing at them because they were homeless, they would go straight to jail for 100 years. I would also, something I would do is, not allow people to buy more than one house if they're not using it. That's just not fair. Also, I'd maybe lower the price of some things, like freaking stuff that's overpriced, like fish fingers.
I think they should lower the price of fruits and vegetables.
You do make a point.
I will make it so that you don't have to pay for hot water
And electricity.
and electricity. Because when you buy a house, the electricity is already there. Why do you have to pay for it?
That's true. Same with the hot water. That's already there. Why do you have to pay for it? I'd make Donald Trump not the president. And make someone better the president. And also allow girls to be president. That's not fair. Because there was actually this year or last year they did, a girl tried to run, but they said they couldn't.
Make the president running thing over again, so that they have to do it again.
But without Donald Trump.
Yeah. Also, I think we should run the world with that. Donald Trump shouldn't be able to do it.
Peace. We out.
For the younglings.
So where your energy overlaps with Carlton is very interesting to me because Carlton are a Taurus energy team. So hard work and money are their primary like kind of goals. And so your Taurus energy sits in your like house that represents people and clubs and groups. So the way that it crosses over, it's like that energy, the whole energy of the Carlton team resonates with you in friendships. So as well as having that AFL placement of like what you're here to do and that, you know, past kind of solid understanding that that's the sort of man that you are, someone who takes action, you cross over as well with that and you resonate with that sort of an energy, which is really cool. Which is really cool. And their masculine energy placement, the Carlton masculine energy placement is in Cancer energy, which you're a Cancer energy person. So there is like a way that they present their masculine energy that you fit really well into.
When are they going to win a premiership?
Well, that is a thing because I think in the next couple of years they've got a chance to. Because what's happening right now, based on the astrology that I've looked at for them, is they sort of had to crash and burn.
Oh, wow.
So they had a number of choices that they were supposed to make. They didn't make them. And there was a particular energy that happened in May that sort of said, this is the end of like you getting all of these bonuses, right? So during May 2022 to November 2023, when they had that good run, it was as if they kind of made a deal with the universe, but didn't look at the small print. And so they got all of this goodness, they got all of this energy that helped the players, all of this energy that was like supporting everything financially and on the field. And they were supposed to focus on the people dynamic, on the fans, on the players. They were supposed to focus on that. And I don't think they did. I think they stayed focused too much on the financials. And so then the people started going downhill, the energy of the people. And so it made it all the way to when the fans are basically so annoyed that they're spray painting Icon Park.
Yeah. True.
And so, you know, it's like the energy of like the poison starting at the top and like kind of trickling all the way down. And so every kind of level, they were kind of given an opportunity to do something different, to do something different, to do something different. And they didn't do anything different. And then they got to the stage, even when they brought in Mr. Priestley, and he's just another finance dude. Yeah. And at that point, that was an opportunity for them to make a decision that was for the people, you know, to get someone who was footy in, and they didn't. They still chose money. And so because of that, they had to have this crash and burn moment. And so because that's made it to the fans, it's kind of up to the fans to send love back up, to kind of try and send love back up the club, try and get it more related to footy. And my expectation was that like something terrible would have to happen, because the last time that there was this big moment of love was Doc when he got sick and everyone shaved their head. And so I was saying, oh no, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to happen to bring the fans together? Is it going to be another devastating moment in time? Is something terrible going to happen? And because the energy points towards mental health, and there's been a lot of mental health situations going on in the Carlton Club anyway, but we might be saved, because Doc retiring could be the emotional moment that brings people back together. So hopefully this is the moment. Jeez. This is the moment. And over the last couple of weeks, I think they've been making the right decisions with personnel. I'm still not 100% convinced they're doing the right thing, but I think they're moving towards the right thing. Yeah.
What you said before, Anali, about 2023, I was with a mate of mine having a couple of beers. He listened to Andrew Russell's podcast. Very interesting. He said Carlton was primed to win the grand final in 23.
Yep.
I looked at him, I said, are you? He goes, oh, you should. The podcast was fantastic, he goes.
Yep, I think they were too. That's because I found Carlton in 2022 when they were on that run. And I was convinced. I was like, if they stay on this energy, they're going in the right direction. This is going to be easy. This will be their flag. 2023. I thought that too. But then when I look back at it and I see how many times they got sort of given a warning by the universe, because if you look at even the times that they had the really good wins, so many personnel were getting injured. And it's like you weren't focusing on the right things then. And every time something like that happened, they would come out and say, oh, we've got all of these members, we've made all of this money, we've done all of it. And you're just like, oh, I don't know. And like, I think they shook the balance. And that contract that we all made a version of it, but Carlton specifically, that contract that they made, it's like, we'll give you all of the rewards that you're asking for, but we're going to have a point in time where we're going to come and do a review, and we're going to ask, did you do your part of the contract? And that contract officially ended in May this year, energetically. And so it's like the universe kind of came in and said, what have you done? Have you done the right things? No, you haven't. Right. Crash and burn, because you need to rebuild now. You need to focus on the right things. So I think next year they've got a much better chance. I think if they continue with the energy I saw last week, and I think watching Doc do his final speech, it was like he kind of gave them feelings back. Like he was like, remember how we loved this thing together? And I think a lot of the older players needed that. I think they needed that moment to realize what they were doing there. And I think especially last week, that game with the young boys all getting their moment to shine reminded them of why they started. Because I think that there's like an emotional poison that's been going on and no one's really been enjoying it. And then you bring in these young kids who are just excited to be out there, and I think it's a little bit contagious.
I hope you're right.
So I think next year is a much bigger chance.
That's very nice, Leah.
And so I guess one of my questions for you is about the energy of the Carlton team when you were playing. Do you see any similarities between now and when you were playing, or is it completely different?
similarities. I know I was lucky enough to, like the Carol or the Moya, to be put in a side that had the eclipses and the Weederings, and that's where I see the same sort of thing happening. And hopefully they continue that, because the balance of the young and the experience could be magnificent for the Carlton Footy Club. That's where I see this. During the year, I'm not a coach and don't tend to be, but keep playing the same blokes. Why don't they bring young kids in? Just give them a go. Jezelenko, who was an absolute superstar as a footballer, people don't rate him as a coach. I do rate him because he gave the young kids a go. He'd come up to you and say, Alex, he wouldn't drop you. He'd say, you've got 6 weeks to prove yourself. Or you've got 4 weeks to prove yourself. It gave you confidence. It gave you a bit of, you knew that you weren't going to get dropped if you played a bad game, but it gave you confidence to keep playing well in a side that had all the greats. So
I see.
I am seeing a bit of this, and hopefully the young kids and the old boys can make it work. And make it happen.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely needed. I think, especially for Carlton, because Carlton's whole energy system is very kind of stuck in the mud. They don't really like change. They don't really like external kind of perspectives. They sort of like to stay in their bubble. And all of these young kids and their energies and their charts is quite challenging to that way. And so I can see how there's that struggle of bringing in this new energy, because they will challenge this stuck in the mud kind of vibe.
Fantastic.
But that's exactly right. Fantastic. That's exactly what they need, is they need to have that challenged. And then when I look at the older players, some of them need to see that challenge, because I think they've been in that stuck in the mud energy for so long that they need it.
Well, funny you should say all that, because when I went down to the footy club, it was early, it was 77, I played in the reserve. The coaches at the time kept playing the older guys. Great footballers, but like you said, stuck in the mud. When you said that, I thought straight away to when Jezelenko came in, he believed in the young kids. Kept the balance of the old experience, great players, but brought young kids in and gave the whole club a new era of football. And a great era of football. But you're right, actually.
And so one of the other interesting things about the Carlton energy is one of the placements that we all have is 160 years. So it doesn't ever come back around while a human is alive, right? But Carlton have been around that long, the whole entire club. So they are at a point in time of a complete renewal of their inner belief system after 160 years. Like right now, it's happening right now. So at the end of March, that energy shifted and they begin a 160-year new cycle. So they're being pushed to change as well. And that's why this crash and burn kind of energy is there, because ignoring the signs for change, staying fearful, staying in their little bubble, and the universe just goes, no. Crash and burn, like you need to start again. And so I'm interested to see where that energy kind of rolls them to and what changes they bring in, because the other hilarious overlap is the most chaotic energy we're experiencing in the universe right now is from a Gemini energy. And Graham Wright, who is supposedly coming in to bring all of these changes, is a Gemini. So he is quite literally, bringing the chaos that's required to make these big changes. So
look, the spirit of Carlton met Graham Wright when he first came to the club, and he sat down. He didn't say much, but he could tell the energy. Seriously, funny you should say all that, Nali. And you have to. He's not going to be the Messiah. Everyone's saying, "Oh, he's going to." He will help us back on the right track. He did it at Hawthorn. He did it at Collingwood. He made decisions that the supporters didn't like, but at the end of it, they held the Premiership Cup up. And August the 15th he starts, so it'd be interesting to see what he...
Well, his energy is very interesting because he is somebody that is an information collector. So he's not somebody who's going to come in and think he knows everything. I'm going to collect every single piece of information I can. And he collects information not just from events, but he collects it from the way, I think the particularly interesting thing is the way that he sees you react to something else. And he goes, okay, files that away. And I think, lots of people are saying, what if he doesn't have the power to make changes? But one of his magical powers, if words were spells, is for him to be able to talk to somebody in the energy that they need to hear it in so that they will agree with him. So he has this ability to come in, collect information, see what pieces need to be changed, and then he would also have the information on how to convince somebody that he's right. That he's got the right opinion. So out of everybody, that energy coming into the Carlton energy that's stuck in the mud is amazing.
Yeah,
so I'm good or bad because the other part of him is he's like, I know that I've collected the right information, so I'm not going to take it as a personal attack if you disagree with me. I know that this is the right thing to do, and that's what I think we should do. So I think his energy is going to be very challenging, but I think the way that his system works in being able to convince people with words, I think he's the only person really who could come in, somebody like that, because of how stuck in the mud they are.
Well, again, all what you've said then, he's sat in all the footy meetings, been quiet, all the coaches' meetings, quiet, all the recruiting meetings, quiet. So you're right.
Just collecting.
Yeah, collecting.
Yep. And that's what they need, and because one of the fears that shows up in Carlton's energy is the fear of an external opinion. They like to keep everything in-house. They like to keep everything to themselves. But what they actually need right now, because you're being pushed, it's 160 years. You quite literally need somebody to come in a completely different energy with completely different eyes and do what he's doing, collect information. So I think he's the right person. Whether or not people like him, whether or not he comes in and goes, these players need to go and people hate him for it, I think he is the right person to remove the puzzle pieces that are keeping everybody stuck and to put ones in
100%.
That will bring change. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And again, if a player doesn't want to play at Carlton, see you later.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't keep a player that doesn't want to play for the Navy Blues.
Yep.
See you later. We'll find someone else.
Yep. And I think that that's part of the weird poison that's coming down is because there was that focus on finance for so many years. I think some of the players, some of the ones who have been poisoned, do need to go. They need to go and find their passion somewhere else because they've lost it along the way.
Very cool.
And whether or not they're ones that, we hold up as these massive names.
Very cool.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad.
And I think that's the right thing for them as well. Yeah. I think, it's not really the sort of job you want to be doing without passion.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I'm looking at your chart and how it crosses over and where the passion could possibly be, everybody needs to have that. It's not an easy job. Yeah. You need to be able to have the passion for it. And, I guess one of the big differences for you is like you didn't have social media. No. So you had a whole lot, your private life was private. And so I think there's something about needing to have even more passion now for it to be able to get through that part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I always talk about one of the things that I first got into when I was looking at the AFL was how men can use sport, specifically AFL, to sort of get out their masculine energy. And somebody with your sort of energy, like Cancer energy, people have a really hard time expressing all of the emotions they feel because you feel everything from everyone all of the time. And you need some kind of creative outlet, which sport was for you. And I think now at these young boys, they need an even bigger creative outlet. They need even more passion because not only are they trying to get out all of these feelings, but they're also being attacked and they don't have any privacy to go and do stuff.
100%.
I feel like when you were playing footy, if you wanted to go and do something that was kind of getting rage out, no one's got a camera in your face.
100%. Chris Tarrant, who, funny you should say all that, I did a sportsman's night with him. And I thought I'd better introduce myself. And he's come over and I said, Chris, Alex Marcou. He goes, I know who you are. And I was sort of taken back. And he said, you guys played in the best era. And I went, okay. I said, why did you say that? He goes, well, you had no mobile phones. You could have a beer when you wanted to have a beer,
Yeah.
and you weren't told what to eat, when to eat. And
Yeah.
he goes, and I looked at him and I thought, wow. So what you're saying,
Yeah.
the pressures of all these other things.
Yeah. Because, you know, there would have been guys from your team who had to go and talk to the media, who had to go and do interviews. But when the cameras were off or when the recordings were off, that was it.
That was it.
And I think now, even though, you know, you have the people who go and do the interviews, you have, you know, the team, these are the people, put them in front of the camera. But everybody else, you're still in front of a camera all of the time.
All the time. Yeah,
And so I think there is a different requirement for mental and emotional health for men now within the sport than when you were playing.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that there is, and I know from looking at the generational differences, that the young men who play now have higher like energies within emotional like kind of regulation, whereas back when you played, there was more of kind of a disciplined energy of like, we're here, we're with our mates, we're going to follow the rules, we're playing the sport, we're being aggressive, let's get the energy out.
Yep.
And now there's like an emotional component that I don't think is being met in all of the teams. Carlton are one of them. I don't think the way that they're dealing with it fits at all. I look at teams like, and the energy structure of Collingwood, and I think they're dealing with it really well. The personnel component, the way that they're dealing with the mental and emotional health of their team. But I don't think Carlton are doing that very well.
You can probably see it on the field too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, seriously.
Yep. Yeah.
You said all that. You could see it on the field.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I definitely can see it. You would too. You're very intuitive.
Yeah.
You know, we would be seeing very similar energies the way that you see energy. But I think, you know, and we look at the Carlton, like one of the people that's particularly interesting for me with Carlton is Elijah Hollins. Because he, like, I can't remember what team there's another guy from that I was looking into, but he came in with a mental health problem, right? Obviously. And so that makes me question, like, why he's dealing with it again. Like, what happened? You didn't get him. It wasn't a surprise that he was having mental health struggles. And so what did you do? Why is he still having these same mental health struggles? And so that makes me question how they're dealing with that internally. And I've looked up a couple of other players. I want to say the Suns. I want to say he plays for the Suns. But there is another player who's done like a lot of interviews about his own brain and his own mental health. And when he started, he said he had to come out and say that I'm struggling with my mental health because he had to move away from his mum. And he said that he didn't want people to think, oh, I can't live near my mum. He didn't want them to think that he was being childish. But he said that his mum was the only person that he could talk to about his mental health. And that's why it was a big deal that he was moving away from her. And so he'd come out and told the club, you know, I struggle with my mental health. My mum is my main person. You know, I'm not taking any medication, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like having the best year of his career.
Wow.
And the way that he talks about his whole mental health journey and how he was supported seems very different to me because it's sort of all out there. And there's nothing being kept secret. And then I think of Carlton and that energy of like, keep it internal and let's not talk about it. Yeah. And I wonder, like, you know, what's happened there? Because he came in with a mental health struggle and he's still not playing because of a mental health struggle. And you're like, something's not working within your system.
Yeah, 100%.
And again, I think it's that problem of being fearful of an external perspective, because they think they're doing the right thing. And then their sounding board is people who think they're doing the right thing because we've done it like this for so long. And I think there's just such a different requirement for a lot of those young men out there when it comes to how they deal with their emotional and mental health. Yep. And just some of the people, like there's a very huge difference between players like Jacob Wiedering and players like... I mean, Cripps is very different as well. Cripps is more of an emotional player. Wiedering is more fiery. Yeah. And so just looking at those two, their requirements for mental and emotional health would be very different. Yeah. Very different. Yeah. And, you know, I think there are a lot of people, not players as well, but people who are fans who use AFL for mental and emotional health. Oh, you know, I think AFL, and, you know, this is where the conversations that I have around the women's AFL gets a little bit muddy, because AFL is a masculine energy sport, whether it's women playing, whether it's men playing. And I think it is a requirement for it to stay that way because of the impact that it has on people's mental and emotional health and being an outlet for men, whether you are playing it, whether you're sitting in the stands yelling, whatever it is, you're there with your mate, whatever it is. I think that there is a requirement for it to stay masculine energy. And you know, the players definitely use it. The fans definitely use it as an outlet. I'm sure you definitely did with your energy system.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like yeah, exactly. And so I think, and I find that really interesting. I find the journey that people can go on with the football team, even when you're not a player, really important. And that's how I got into watching the fan cams on Blue Abroad, because of watching these people use the story of the club to help them get out their feelings of frustration, to help them get out their anger.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a really great example of the difference between how feminine energy deals with emotions and how masculine energy deals with emotions. And I think that, again, that is part of the problem when it comes to looking at the mental and emotional health of the players, because a lot of mental health stuff is aimed at women, is aimed at sit down and talk about your feelings. And men don't do that. Men need action. And so I think that there's also that difference, you know, and like the more emotional players, sure, they might be able to sit down and talk about their feelings, but that same program's not going to work for someone who wants to take action, who needs to be doing stuff. And so I do question what that internal system looks like. And when I had done a bit of research, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was one of the mental health workers within the AFL said that there is a confusing amount of options with how they deal with that sort of stuff. And that makes me wonder, like, how do you then make a choice which one is for you? And how are you deciding which one is for them? And what is the differences? And because it's also in-house, we don't know. We just hear them saying, oh, the mental health people are really great. But then you see them on the field, and I don't believe that at all. Like, I think, and especially you can watch it kind of go through all of the players. Like, I think Cripps was probably the last one that I kind of saw it in, was just that giving up, like, I give up kind of moment. Like, I can't change anything. And that's what I mean about this crash and burn. Like, it had to get to him. It had to get to him before it kind of gets realized that we need to make this change. And so, you know, like when you were playing, like what did you guys do for your mental and emotional health?
There was no support.
Yeah.
It was gambling, alcohol.
Yeah.
And you're right. We, you know, as we never talked about that sort of stuff as players. And yeah, there's a few issues that guys are going through that I played with that if they had the support, it would be different. But we had none of that.
I thought it was also, I think it's also interesting to think about like what happens after you finish, because the AFL being somewhere that you can get your emotions out in, when you're done, what then?
Huge problem.
What do I do then? You know?
That was probably the biggest problem. People in my era and beyond, to the point where David Parkin always said, you need a job, you need something to keep you. Because after footy's finished, people really don't want to know you anymore.
Yeah.
And you go, well, it's all over. And a lot of guys can't relate to that. And depression sets in. And to this day now, there's a lot of
yeah, I mean, I think there would be, because I think especially when you were playing, like men having feelings was not a thing.
No, not a thing.
You know, like, and you grew up with dads who didn't have feelings and their dads didn't have feelings, and none of you were allowed to have feelings. But yet all of you on the field are using that to get your feelings out.
Yeah.
You know, we're using our aggression, we're doing all of these things, and then it ends and you haven't been taught anything that you were even using it for that.
No.
And so all of a sudden you don't have that outlet, and now you're stuck with these feelings and you've got nowhere to put them.
True.
And you've never been taught it.
Yeah.
And so between your generation and now, we have more of an understanding of like how emotional regulation works in people. And I think some of the players know that, but then I'm like, I question, are you being taught the right way? Are we teaching them the right way? Are we teaching them what they're actually using that outlet for? Like, as you guys weren't taught that.
No.
And so then they have all of these impacts of like, well, you're not being taught that. And so then when you're not playing, either you've got, you know, you're off for personal reasons, or you're off because you're injured and you don't have that outlet. Do you understand what's happening to you mentally and emotionally when you don't have that outlet? Welcome to your astrology tip for today. Today's astrology tip is Saturn. What about it? Why do you care? One of the cycles that we can find from astrology is a cycle that asks us, what kind of a man, What kind of a woman, what kind of an adult do you want to be? This is a cycle that comes around between the ages of 28 and 31. And in astrology, we say this is your Saturn return. Now, what happens during a Saturn return is the part of your psyche that builds your inner belief system, the part of your psyche that learned things from the father energy around you growing up, starts to question everything. It wants to know how you will be moving forward with your own inner belief system. So these particular dates are very active right now. Saturn in Pisces has been the last couple of years worth of energy. So anybody born within these dates have had a lot of fuckery over the last couple of years. Anyone born in these dates under Saturn in Aries is about to have a whole lot of fuckery. Okay, so you are being asked or have been asked, what sort of an adult are you going to be? What does that inner belief system look like? We are moving into Saturn in Aries starting from February next year. We will be there without going back into Pisces. But for now, we are about to enter the Saturn in Pisces retrograde for the final time in 30 years. So anyone born within these Saturn in Pisces dates, you will be experiencing the final retrograde of your Saturn return, where the last couple of years, the universe has said, what kind of an adult are you going to be? What do you value? What's your belief system? And this retrograde, starting on the 1st of September and going until February, is allowing you the final little time to tinker around. What is it over the last couple of years that you liked that you want to bring with you? Did you like any of it? What have you let go? What do you need to let go? Those will be the questions that will be being asked of you from the 1st of September until February next year. And those of you with Saturn in Aries, you have just begun this 2-year journey of figuring out what your inner belief system looks like outside of what you've been taught since you were born. And we are currently in that retrograde because before it goes back into Pisces, it's going to finish up Saturn in Aries retrograding. And that is going to be from now until the 1st of September. So right now, you're being questioned on what you started building around May 24. So you may find that there are some things you're bringing with you. There are some things you're wanting to change. You're sort of able to see that period last week in May, first week in June from a slightly different perspective. So this sort of fuckery, there's no nice way to put it. It'll quite literally shake up your whole inner belief system and psyche and parental childhood wounds like you're a fucking snow globe. And what will come out the other end? Probably someone a little tiny bit confused, but somebody much closer to understanding what sort of an adult they want to be and what sort of an inner belief system they want to work with. If you need any help with your Saturn return, you can come and find me. And that has been your astrology tip break for today. Back to the show. I watched the interview with Jamara from Bulldogs.
Okay.
And he made some very interesting points about that because his whole thing started when somebody from his family died. And he said he thought he was fine. He did all of the cultural things that they do to say goodbye and he thought he was fine. But because he wasn't playing footy, he didn't have that outlet. And that's when he went downhill faster, was because he was unaware of how much he actually used footy to get through emotions. And I think that would go for so many of the players.
So many.
And so I find that particularly interesting that like he said, hey, I'm having a struggle. And they said, take some time off. And he was like, no, like I can't do that. And I'm like, that's interesting because we have so many players injured. What are they doing?
100. Oh,
how are they getting their feelings out? You know?
I agree.
So
Yeah,
it's interesting. And you think of like Harry and Elijah who've had all of this time off because of mental health. But like, again, that's their likely one of their outlets for getting through all of those feelings. And so I think that there needs to be a lot more energy put into looking at how men deal with feelings, how men deal with emotions and what they need to be doing if they are off for mental health, if they are off for injuries, what they are doing for their brain, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're doing the right thing.
No, I agree with you.
And I think that there is a softness to it that I think needs to be hardened up. And like, not like men should be men, but I think there is a level of that. I think there is a level of men needing to, like the players needing to take responsibility for how they're using their energy, how they're getting their emotions out. And I watched Carlton's therapist talk about how to deal with people talking shit about you on the internet. And her thing was like, well, we need to make people realize that it hurts your feelings. And I'm like, no. You need to make the men realize that they can't have their feelings hurt by someone talking crap about them on the internet. The confidence to be able to read something about yourself and not get hurt.
Funny you should say that. Jacob Wiedering, this is a few years ago, I met him at a function and I just said to him, mate, are you okay? Like, your game has dropped. And this was a few years ago now. And I said, is there a problem? And he said to me, oh, these bloody social media, I'm reading all these things. And I looked at him and I said, are you serious? I said, you're better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, either get rid of it or believe in yourself.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying any, but
Yep.
his football since then,
Mm-hmm.
he probably still watches social media, but
Mhm.
his football has been consistently good.
Yes. Yeah. He's somebody he's quite an optimistic person, but he doesn't like it when people don't like him. His whole energy system, he's kind of the person who like needs people to like him, is the optimist, but very harsh with truth, but wouldn't like it if he felt like he was having a negative impact on other people.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would take him his own inner confidence to be able to go, actually, you know what, you don't know what you're talking about. I am actually very good at this.
Yeah.
And it would actually just take practice for him to be getting into that mindset. Some of the players don't have that ability. They don't have the ability to kind of talk confidence into themselves. They have to be taught kind of skills on how to work with that. And like the way that I look at people's mental and emotional health in categories is like, that's what concerns me, is because I think where we're moving to with people is that men are kind of moving into this space of becoming more emotionally and spiritually aware of themselves. And I don't think the services that we have and the way that we talk about men, I don't think it matches. And I think there's going to be a huge problem in men's mental health over the next few years because I think there's a hole. And I think, and that's why I'm doing these interviews and chatting with people and doing the birth charts, because I think what I do can be very helpful for people, just an understanding of how your system works. And especially for men, because men like action. You know, a lot of men don't want to go and just sit with a therapist and say, I feel sad. And when you look at birth chart things and you can kind of say, well, this is how you experienced your mother or your father, and that's where it's having an impact on your life. And if you do these things, it's like it gives you an understanding. And I think there's this blanket idea of like people just need to talk about their feelings. Yeah. That's not going to fix everything.
No.
And the therapist's idea of like, let's make people realize that they're hurting your feelings, that doesn't help anybody.
No.
You know, you need to have the confidence to believe in yourself. And if you are being hurt by somebody's words, you have an inner belief system that needs work to be done on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that that's a huge problem. But these new boys coming in are completely different energied people. You know, their discipline energy comes from being accepted for the weirdos that they are, versus the older guys, their discipline energy comes from following the rules. And so these new ones coming in have less cares about talking about things like feelings and less cares of like what you think of me if I'm having a breakdown. You know, I think Jamar is the perfect example of that, who is just like, yeah, I'm having a breakdown. This is what was happening. And I don't think that anybody from like when you were playing would have been as open to come out and say mental health problems.
No way.
And so like that is just the example of like, we need to change the system.
Yeah.
You know, we need to be having more of this more normal talk of this sort of stuff. And I think he's the perfect example of like really needing to understand that some of these young men use that sport for emotional health. And when you take that away from them, that's where you start seeing these problems as well. So I think that's particularly interesting to me. But I think interesting what you said about that you guys played in the right era, because like I said to you at the start, that energy is about to roll back in. of when you played.
How good does it? That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic.
So- and it's coming in with like some slightly different parts to it of like, you know, collective change and like understanding things from a different perspective and this emotional growth. It's coming in with that, but it's the same kind of confident weirdo energy that I think we need. And so I think 2026, 2027 definitely is going to be the time for them to be able to get a flag. Because if they do what they're told by the energy of the universe, they would have had one in 2023. But they didn't.
They did.
It broke the rules. And so I think now they've got this new opportunity starting to roll in. And I think that will probably kick off in February next year for them. And they have this opportunity to build something new. And their focus, one of their main things, which, you know, a lot of people are talking about, like, what's the identity of Carlton? The identity of Carlton, based on their energy map, is to be here for the people, specifically men, and to help them work through their brains, basically, is what they're here for. And so the trajectory that they took that went towards finances was the wrong one, because it's the idea of like, you know, you built this thing so it could be strong, and then what did you do with it? And you didn't do what you're here to do, which is to help men specifically with their emotions, with their mental health. That's what they're here for, to bring communities of men together to help them for that. And so when I see things, and not that I'm against women playing, but when I see things like pushing all of this marketing towards the women and the Carlton Respects, which kind of talks down to men instead of dealing with the mental health situation that causes the violence. And I'm like, you're missing the point, you know? And especially Carlton, and I've said it since I came into the Carlton journey, they're bigger than a football club. There's a reason they attract so many fans. And one of those reasons is because they are here to have access to large groups of men to be able to help them work through their mental and emotional stuff. And when they're not doing that, they're not going to win. They're not going to win. They're not here. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. And, you know, the comparison being Collingwood, and part of Collingwood's mission is to help people understand how to accept themselves as weirdos and how to go from the journey of the bad boy to somebody who's successful. And I think you can see that they're doing that very
100%.
correctly.
100%.
And, you know, their coach matches their energy very well as well. And I actually think Voss's energy does match the Carlton team. I think with the right mental and emotional education for the players, I think he would be able to communicate with them better, because he has that same gift that you have of being able to feel how people feel and being able to talk to them about it as a man. And I think that he's the right person for it, but I don't think that a lot of them understand themselves enough to be able to have that. And I think that they think that he needs to do more for that, but he's not the person for that, you know. No. He's there to be able to train them in the way that they need to be trained, and they need to come to the table themselves on taking responsibility, on understanding what they're doing there. And so I think there's a mix, the incorrect mix there. And I think that unless Carlton really pick up on the emotional and mental health, that's what they're here for, and push more into men's mental health, I think they'll struggle. I think they'll keep getting lessons like they've been getting, because it's about the people. It's about showing the men that it's okay to get your feelings out in this way, or to want to know how to use sport. And I think that that's part of their journey. And I don't think they've been doing that for a number of years.
Well, again, you've got this outsider coming in. He might push that a bit more.
Yeah. And like, I think they have a huge opportunity to. And like, when I say like they've missed these signs over the past couple of years, they've absolutely missed the signs. Elijah, Harry, you know, you've been shown all of these things of like where you could be making a big deal out of something instead of keeping it secret. And I hope that that's one of the things that he does, is really bring that in. And because of the way his energy works, he's not really afraid to talk about anything.
No.
And so I think that's the right energy to be coming in, as well as these young boys. I think it is the perfect mix of chaos. I think the chaos storm that's going to come between now and the end of the year is the right one. I think it's the right one. And I think Doc leaving, I think that adds like a love component that I think they'll need to hold on to from when the chaos storm comes.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Honestly, you should sit down with a lot of the players there and go through this, because
that's my goal, honestly.
This would be very good for a lot of the players.
I think so too. I think so too. When I started this this whole job, I found young men like were the ones that kept finding me. When I started working at a shop and doing this, the woman who owns the shop said, I've never seen so many men come in here. And so I think part of it is my job to be able to translate this information to men. You've been watching The Walking Tower. I really appreciate having you here. Please like, subscribe, share so we can get this message out to as many people that need to hear it. And remember, sometimes we need to let the tower fall. Stay weird.
Heretic flames from your gasoline hate. If you got a problem